Repression Republic. The police continues to raid the offices of independent media in Kazakhstan. There is always a first time. The country celebrates the day of the first president for the first time in its history. Trying Private Chelach. Defense lawyer Serik Sarsenov suddenly becomes the central figure of the trial. Kyrgyz example. The city council election in the capital of Kyrgyzstan could just be a rehearsal of the upcoming vote to parliament. Hello, I'm Asylbek Abdulov. You're watching Vlast KZ on kplus.
Соратники осужденного лидера партии «Алга» Владимира Козлова обратились с письмом к министру внутренних дел Касымову.
Associates of Vladimir Kozlov, the leader of the political party Alga, sentenced recently to 7.5 years in prison, appealed to the Interior Minister Kasymov following the news that the oppositionist will be escorted to one of the correctional facilities in northern Kazakhstan. Activists cite Article 68 of Kazakhstan's Criminal Code, which stipulates that convicts must serve their sentences close to their place of residence, Almaty in case of Kozlov, who lived there for the last 10 years. Officials attempt to send the politician to one of the most remote regions of Kazakhstan, especially in defiance of the criminal code, is seen by Kozlov's supporters as the ongoing persecution of the opposition leader, as well as subjection of his family and friends to moral and psychological pressure.
И морально-психологического давления на его родных и близких. В течение недели поступала разноречивая информация о маршруте.
The information about the escort route itself is quite ambiguous and contradictory. Some online messages seem to hint that the politician is in Aktobe jail, but others claim he was allegedly seen in Taraz. In any case, the northern Kazakhstan destination was confirmed by Charter for Human Rights Director Jemis Turmagambetova, who got her data directly from the Interior Ministry. This is the likely route of the transfer found online, although the logic behind remains a mystery for now.
Отношение властей к осужденному политику.
The attitude of the authorities towards the convicted politician, along with another round of pressuring independent media, was noted in the recent European Parliament's resolution on Kazakhstan. The document recommends the EU to demand Astana's swift improvements in human rights protection, democracy, and the rule of law.
И принципов правового государства.
On Thursday evening, bailiffs delivered a notice to the editorial office of Golos Respubliki to suspend the newspaper. Upon transferring the documents, the young people demanded to enter the office, and after being refused, they simply decided to break in. Press the panic button. Once they broke in the office, the chief bailiff of Medeu District Court of Almaty, with the entourage of young people in civilian clothes, started to seize piles of all the circulation of Golos Respubliki with no explanation. Who are you? Show your ID. Are you a thief? The search witnesses were appointed by the bailiff right on site. Those who rushed in the office a few minutes earlier all of a sudden became search witnesses. I know for a fact that one of the witnesses works for Commission of Judicial Performance. He works as assistant to Galim, the main bailiff, who's recently been to our office. Bailiffs drafted the act of newspaper seizure right on the scene. In fact, no warrant for search and seizure has been issued to the editorial staff of Golos Respubliki. Show me your ID. Who are you? This is the footage of seizure of a different newspaper called Nevzгляд, yet the scenario is the same. Several young men in civilian clothes who haven't identified themselves took away all 99 copies of Nevzгляд newspaper, which is a collection of articles that were published by staff of forbidden newspaper Vzгляд. The bailiff is seizing all 99 copies of our circulation based on the court decision, which prohibits the printing of Vzгляд. However, this is a different newspaper called Nevzгляд. The editors of Golos Respubliki and Vzгляд mentioned the violations again at the press conference. According to Olesya Shilkova, the bailiffs had no right to seize Nevzгляд because this publication hasn't even been registered yet. Just leave me alone, they haven't showed me anything, they simply came and seized everything. On Friday, the circulation of another newspaper called Azad has been withdrawn from the stores. In fact, Azad was not on the list of opposition media. The reason behind it was the fact that articles from Golos Respubliki have been published on the pages of Azad newspaper. We're only having a discussion. The actual trial hasn't even started yet. We will let you all in the courtroom once the trial begins. This week, the trial of the case of Golos Respubliki newspaper finished even before it has started. The preliminary hearing in Medeu District Court revealed that prosecutors improperly filed a complaint indicating the staff of Golos Respubliki as defendants instead of the newspaper company itself. The company's staff is neither a natural nor a legal entity, therefore they cannot be sued. I'm not sure how would the Prosecutor General's office and court itself solve the situation. In the meantime, Stan TV video portal received two statements of claim. Both Bostandyk and Medeu district courts have filed a suit against it, yet it is still not clear which one of two will review the case. The authorities of Kazakhstan aren't really interested in having a legal investigation. It's not about the defendant, nor is it about the trial and a fair judgment. As I mentioned earlier, they're not looking for a defendant, whether it is a person or an organization that will defend itself. It is a mere formality to receive a decision of the court to ban these media sources. To ban something that doesn't even exist yet. That was a discrepancy in the lawsuit against the party Alga as well. The Prosecutor General's office filed Alga party as a defendant, while the party is not registered and therefore is not a legal entity. However, Alma-Ata District Court has already ruled to suspend Alga. There is a lawsuit that hasn't been reviewed yet, and it is not clear who is the defendant. Moreover, the court already made a certain decision which we should promptly execute, otherwise we might even be facing criminal liability. In order to fully participate in the trial, members of Alga already submitted a request to the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney Generals for registration of the party. In the meantime, the party leader Vladimir Kozlov, convicted by Aktsau court for inciting social hatred, was going to be transferred to the colony. However, his wife Aliya has been trying to establish his whereabouts for 3 days straight, yet to no avail. On the evening of November 23rd, the head of Correctional System Department of Mangistau region personally visited his cell. He brought people in civilian clothes, which turned the whole jail cell upside down. They allegedly found some prohibited items and therefore sent him to isolation ward for 10 days. The punishment was effective immediately, and that is why he spent a day in a solitary confinement before the scheduled transfer. The website of Alga Party reported that Kozlov was transferred to Aktobe from Mangyshlak station. On Friday, the post on Facebook page of Respublika stated that Vladimir Kozlov will be held in Taraz detention center until December 4th. Then he will be sent to Kushmurun prison in northern Kazakhstan region. However, legally Kozlov should serve time in accordance with the place of residence, which is Almaty region. The attempt to send Vladimir Kozlov to one of the most remote regions of Kazakhstan in defiance of the Criminal Execution Code is regarded as a continuation of political persecution of an opposition leader and moral and psychological pressure exerted on his family and friends. On November 23rd, the European Parliament introduced a resolution on Kazakhstan. European Parliament calls on the Kazakh authorities to conduct a prompt and impartial investigations into all allegations of torture and ill treatment related to the bloodshed in Zhanaozen, and to express deep concern regarding the lawsuits initiated on November 20, 2012 by the Chief State Prosecutor of Kazakhstan, who requested to ban unregistered opposition party Alga Association Khalik Maydani and to shut down several opposition media of Kazakhstan on charges of extremism. The lawful fight against extremism and terrorism should not be used as a cover to ban opposition activities and restrict the freedoms of expression. Minister of Foreign Affairs Yalan Idrisov and Presidential Advisor Yermuhamed Yertezbayev also received letters from the OSCE representatives on freedom of the media Dunya Miyatovich, addressing the threat to media pluralism in Kazakhstan. The second week in a row, the international human rights organizations appeal to prevent the eradication of the opposition media in Kazakhstan. Yet the media and NGOs continue to receive the pressure. 2 court hearings on Golos Respubliki newspaper and unregistered Alga party will be held next week.
1 декабря 1991 года состоялись первые всенародные выборы президента Республики Казахстан.
On December 1st, 1999, the first nationwide presidential elections were held in Kazakhstan, with 98.7% of the votes going to the president of the Kazakh Soviet Republic, Nursultan Nazarbayev.
Как день первого президента Казахстана.
The day will now be celebrated as First President's Day, and last week the state had a first go at it. Of note, December 1st is recognized internationally as the World AIDS Day since 1988, which allowed internet users to have a field day mashing up 2 events and calling the result the Feast in Time of Plague, referencing a 1901 opera by Cesar Cuy.
Пиром во время чумы.
There is no reason for tears and sadness. Let happiness and laughter illuminate your face. There is no king who will compare to Nur Sultan. There is no braver Kazakh on this land. These moving declarations of love towards the national leader were heard on the eve of First President's Day across the capital, in kindergartens, schools, and universities. He developed the skills of a national leader and became president. 1001 praise towards Nursultan Nazarbayev on the eve of the newly invented holiday is broadcast by every Kazakh television channel. One homeland, one destiny, one leader. A show devoted to the state holiday First President's Day was held at Astana Arena Stadium. Kazakhstan's achievements are a work of the population and the national leader Nursultan Nazarbayev. A passerby is accepting candy from an artist with a TV set on his head. This is what I am able to give to the people. I am Kazakh television. I am a great liar. I like to lie. During his performance called The Great Liar, artist Askat Akhmedyarov gave out candy to residents of Astana, symbolizing saccharine information that sticks to your teeth. Some timidly shied away from the artist, others chewed on the candy with pleasure. After all, as the advertising slogan says, it is better to chew than talk. The people are right. He is not just a man of the year, but man of the century. May this holiday go on for centuries. Our president is the first to be blessed by the Almighty and the people's will. 3 days before the official holiday, a total of 100 former and current parliamentarians are discussing the exceptional role of the national leader in the formation of parliamentarianism at a conference. Its name is an oxymoron in and of itself. The national leader cancels out the concept, but those giving out speeches are ignoring the fact. In the art of diplomacy, ability to organically combine his people's needs with the needs of other states near and far, nobody comes close. If you think about it, not even leaders of major powers can compare with our national leader in this art. Artist Akhmedyarov is far from being in tune with the popular art of praising Nazarbayev. Dalapker village, his place of residence, is half an hour away from the capital, but there is no central heating and no water in his house. There is, however, plenty of space for self-expression. I think here he is coming out of a feast drunk. I drew him in a free manner. It has two names, portrait of a man in a felt hat and a drunken Kazakh. The portrait of a man in a felt hat will obviously not be shown in Astana's exhibitions in honor of First President's Day. The only portraits here are those of one man in a suit. The portrait of the president was drawn by Italian artist Ron Discenza. It was brought to Astana on the eve of the big day. Official legend says this was a Time magazine cover. The fact that Nazarbayev never appeared on the cover of the famous magazine does not bother anyone. The most exemplary canvas with the president's image is in the nation's biggest gallery, the Palace of Independence. Member of the USSR Artists Union since 1985, Agim Salid Uzitkanov, most of whose works are housed in Kazakhstan's and Turkmenistan's presidential apartments, pictured Nursultan Nazarbayev in such grandeur that even skyscrapers appear tiny compared to the national leader's stature. It is the most prized showpiece in the palace, and 24-year-old Yekaterina Ungefug is responsible for taking care of it. Yekaterina is paid $166 for dusting the canvas. We look after the paintings so that they're clean. We keep the guests from touching them because these are showpieces after all. One floor above, the Palace of Independence is hosting an exhibition of the Prime Minister's personal photographer, Shukur Shahai. It also has a selection of the national leader's photographs. One pictures the president with his entire team. The other shows him taking his first oath as the head of an independent country. One picture draws special attention. Nursultan Nazarbayev is on his knees, kissing the national flag. The figure of opposition politician Serikbolsin Abdildin is in the background. Some people told me to crop out Abdildin when I was printing this photograph. I asked them why. It is a historical fact. I was against it, and the photograph came out as I took it. Ahmediyarov also uses photographs in his works, but not just for historical authenticity, but for something more. I analyze several photographs, choose characters, make up additions here and there, and what comes from it is Kazakhstani society, rising somewhere up above. So-called Vira Kazakhstan. The arrow symbolizes that movement. This is my desire. I do want this to remain art, or a simulated elevation from one floor to another. Here, Nursultan Nazarbayev's power vertical in the face of governors of all levels lines up for a historical photograph. Minutes before the pleasant moment, Nazarbayev reminds the officials seated in gilded chairs whose money they are living off of. In other words, he scolded his own so that others were afraid. Public servant lives off Kazakhstan's taxpayers' money. They hired you and me to serve them, not for them to serve you. Remember these words. How much longer can I repeat myself? You need to be closer to the people. Only then respect and order will follow. These words reveal the ideological rationale behind First President's Day, to be closer to the people, although it may seem one cannot get any more closer. Kazakhstan will be more beautiful, more respected across the world. Its people will be richer, and you will undoubtedly love our Republic of Kazakhstan.
1 декабря 1991 года на президентских выборах за Назарбаева проголосовало 98,7% избирателей.
Nazarbayev collected 98.7% of the votes in 1991. 4 years later, his presidential term was extended until 2000 as a result of a referendum. Later, the head of state won the early 1999 elections with about 80% of the votes, against his main opponent, communist Balsin Abdildin, who officially gained support of about 12% of the population. Independent observers said the figures were too conservative.
15%, но независимые наблюдатели объявили их явно заниженными. 25 ноября
On November 25th, the patriarch of Kazakh opposition turned 75. Just recently, Balsin Abdildin presented his 5-volume work called Kazakhstan Statehood. More than 3,000 pages chronicle the history of the country from 1989 to the present.
Это более 3000 страниц.
I remember it like it was yesterday. He arrived from Minsk on January 23rd and asked for a meeting. We met in his office and I realized it was impossible to work with him any further. It became absolutely clear that it was dangerous to work with him. He was elected first secretary of the Central Committee, then chairman of the Presidium, then first president on April 24th, 1990. I always supported him with the only hope and aspiration that new blood within Kazakhstan's power ranks would bring about changes. I solemnly swear to serve faithfully the people of our multinational republic, strictly follow the constitution of the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, guarantee citizens' rights and freedoms, and conscientiously fulfill the high duties bestowed on me of the President of the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic. The date he chose as the countdown of his first term, December 1st, was incorrect, a sort of falsified history. Nursultan is avoiding the fact that he served as president of the Kazakh SSR. He wants to rewrite history. This is the day of adopting the Constitution, January 28, 1993. It became known as the Abdildin Constitution among the people, and the current one, Nazarbayev's. Of course, it was good that the president relied on the parliament, but he wanted to rule the state single-handedly. We need to move away from a communist and a presidential regime to create normal working conditions for the parliament. The parliamentarians were ripe, strong, and open. Back then, all government agencies, including the president, relied on the parliament. Up until 1993, we had a parliamentary republic. The president was no more than a representative figure. By secretly convincing a certain portion of parliamentarians headed by the deceased Nurkhadilov, he began dissolving the council. On August 20th, 1995, we came out to the Supreme Council building protesting the adoption of the Constitution via referendum, since it is a very complicated mechanism. They brought in security forces. By and large, this was a constitutional overthrow under the president's leadership. The Supreme Council was surrounded by security forces. Before that, in October, there was the shooting of the White House in Moscow. All of this forced us to relinquish power without shedding blood. Currently, among presidential candidates are Mr. Sirikbolsin Abdildin, Mr. Engels Gabasov, Mr. Gani Kasimov, and Mr. Nursultan Nazarbayev. They showed his rating at 16 to 17%, which is why he was a strong competitor. He was very nervous when the Communist Party offered their own candidate. People in villages were half jokingly, half seriously asking me, "Why are you not president? We voted for you in 1999. So by and large, Nursultan not only gained power, but he usurped it. The same happened with the democratic choice of Kazakhstan. It started out well, but then he bought off one and jailed the other member. I was sitting in the second or third row. Nursultan was giving a speech and said in Kazakh, "Sirikbolsin and I were at the forefront. Let the young generation grow, but without breaking the law." Those who wish to express their views are set to rock the state's boat. While this boat has long been rotten, you and I need to set sail a new boat with a new captain. The initiators of this movement themselves have not thought it out and did not support each other. They cracked at the first blow. I would not say I led a comfortable life all these years. There was a lot of danger. I cannot disclose this information now, but there were 3 attempts at my life. I also cannot say I led a comfortable political life as member of the opposition because there was constant surveillance over me. To freely observe, criticize, and discuss the authorities' internal and foreign policy, not because I hate someone, but in order for the state to be normal. You cannot construct statehood based on a lie. You cannot educate people by stealing. That is what's most important. Next on Vlast KZ. Trying Private Chelach. Defense lawyer Serik Sarsenov suddenly becomes the central figure of the trial. Kyrgyz example. The city council election in the capital of Kyrgyzstan could just be a rehearsal of the upcoming vote to parliament. Stay with us, Vlast KZ will return with more in a couple of minutes.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublikas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublika.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
Судебное заседание над пограничником Владиславом Челохом, который обвиняется в убийстве...
A regular hearing in the case of border guard Vladislav Cheloch, charged with mass murder of 15 fellow soldiers at the border post Arkan-Kirgen, is rescheduled for December 4th due to the absence of the defendant's defense team. Attorney Estiara failed to appear in court for health reasons, while Cheloch's main lawyer, Sedik Sarsenov, previously challenged the presiding judge. When his request was rejected, Sarsenov asked for permission to leave the courtroom, once again citing health reasons. In his turn, Cheloch himself said he will not continue in the process without his lawyers, although the judge dismissed the motion as well. Despite all these theatrics, the public interest in the process quite clearly begins to fade.
Общественный интерес к процессу тем временем начинает угасать.
Another week of trial once again resembled a theatrical performance, yet starring a different actor. The previous week is remembered for strange behavior of Vladislav Cheloch, whereas now it is the turn of his attorney Sedik Sarsenov. One by one he kept reading out the petitions, all of which were conventionally rejected by the judge. It all started with objections to illegal actions of the judge.
Вот эти все действия, в этих действиях, представляешь, я усматриваю признаки преступления.
Throughout all of these actions, I see a criminal offense under Article 308, the abuse of power, and Article 365, obstructing the work of an advocate. All claims to defense are based on footage from the criminal scene, hence the attorney is convinced that additional expert examinations are required. I request to appoint the forensic and ballistic examinations to determine the angle of bullet shots to the backs of the beds, and then to determine which beds these backs are from and whether it matches with Cheloch's testimonies. Cheloch himself refused to watch the footage from the scene of the tragedy. Every day, the families of victims viewed the tapes of police footage showing how forensic experts and criminologists pull out charred corpses and body parts from under the burned remains of the building. Mothers of the victims couldn't take it. It is hard for us, I couldn't keep watching it. What is there to watch besides ashes? We as parents believe that Cheloch himself needs to watch the footage as well. Then we will ask him questions and have him tell us whether he's actually done it or not. In the meantime, the number of audience in the hearings goes less every day. The families and friends of the victims were simply walking out of the courtroom, refusing to watch the mournful footage. It's a shame what they say about our children. They imply that our children were hiding under the beds, that they hurt Cheloch and kept him starving. We don't believe that. Our children have never been covered. My son was a big 6-foot-tall guy who played hockey and volleyball. He wouldn't miss a single tournament. I refuse to believe that he was humiliating Cheloch. These are the soldiers of 24/84 military unit, Nikolai Kosinov, Konstantin Gusev and Alexei Bogdanov. They went through a military training with Vladislav Cheloch and therefore were invited as witnesses by the defense. They spoke very vague, saying that the defendant was very hot-tempered. What do you mean by saying that he had a hot temper? Was he shouting and yelling or acting belligerent? No, he was just hasting us by telling us to hurry up. But what does it have to do with a hot temper? The witnesses failed to portray the psychological profile of Vladislav. None of them could recall anything special about Chelach. They remember him as a normal guy, somewhat boastful, sensitive, but forgiving. Disputes occurred following the testimonies of other witnesses invited by the prosecution. The soldiers who first arrived to Arkan-Kirgen to see why there was no communication. Eyewitness Yerlan Kabdrashov told a story which contradicted his testimony during the investigation. None of them mentioned dogs in their earlier testimonies, yet suddenly the witness remembered that he walked in the kennels and even gave water to one of the dogs. Another witness claims there were no dogs. One of them says that he heard the dogs barking, while the other one claims he didn't. They don't seem to have hearing problems. This week, Vladislav Chelach first appeared in court on Wednesday, only for a few minutes. He still refuses to review the case video materials, but he will definitely testify. Are you willing to participate in the proceedings? I'm only going to testify. So giving testimonies is as far as you intend to participate. And the review of the classified material. Would you like to testify today? I'm going to testify only after the case materials have been reviewed. Today? No. Upon making the statement, Chelach left the courtroom. His attorney in turn requested an additional examination at the murder scene of the huntsman Ruslan Kim. Upon the review of the footage, he was outraged by the fact that nobody checked for fingerprints of bullet shells found in the house. There were other issues as well. Chelach demonstrated how he shot the huntsman in the back from this entrance, so the body had to fall forward. However, the corpse is lying with the head facing the exit. How so? However, the public prosecutor didn't support the petition once again by limiting himself to generalities. The relevant expert examinations, including forensic and ballistic, have been conducted. Moreover, considering the nature of Kim's injury, all appropriate expert examinations also have been made. The mother of Vladislav Chelach, Svetlana Vashchenko, also insists on the independent expert examination. She wants the video of conversation between her son and his cellmate to be examined, even though the court declared the authenticity of the video. I want to conduct a separate, independent examination as opposed to the one they've done. The video from the camera is in fact completely irrelevant and the audio was added to it from different source. This video was made back in Ucharau, not when he was already here. By the end of the week, Serix Arsenov has lost his patience. The judge refused to review the case materials all over again and the lawyer simply lost it. This is a complete lawlessness. I can't keep my mouth shut and therefore I'm inclined to file the recusal motion. This is the second recusal motion against the judge Yerbol Akhmedjanov, however he still managed to retain the chair of presiding judge. The petitions are not based on the law and completely unsubstantiated, although the lawyers had the opportunity to review the case files and make copies during the preliminary investigation. I am feeling very sick, that's why I cannot participate today. I need to go and see the doctor. I have a headache and blood pressure. I don't understand what is happening here. Please enter this in the record that Attorney Sarsenov got up willful. Your Honor, there is a certain order. The result of this verbal exchange turned out to be very unpredictable. Serix Arsenov left Taldykorgan for Almaty to get a medical treatment. I'm convinced that all three of the prosecutors also committed crime by being negligent. Your Honor, I was informed that my lawyer is not present and that he will be back in 2 or 3 days. I object to continue the trial without my lawyer, Mr. Sarsenov, because we have developed a line of defense with him. He defended me during the preliminary investigation and in the court, while the lawyer Yestyarov is not familiar with the case. Is that all you have? That's all. The court decided to continue without him. In the end, the second lawyer, Serek Yestyarov, was representing Vladislav Chelach. He has an access to classified materials. Despite the objections, the court continued to study protocols of the crime scene investigation. However, on Friday, the attorney Yestyarov couldn't attend the hearing because he fell sick. The trial has been postponed till December 4th.
Кыргызские эксперты расценивают прошедшие местные выборы.
Experts in Kyrgyzstan view the last local elections to city councils as a dress rehearsal of the upcoming vote for parliament seats. Observers say that the formation of elected bodies through party lists increased competition between political organizations, even in the struggle for power at lesser levels. Outsiders will certainly merge and consolidate now to somehow resist the domination of major parties.
Аутсайдеры наверняка пойдут по пути слияний и укрупнений.
Even a short respite from severe frost on November 25th didn't seem to encourage the Bishkek citizens to visit the ballot stations for casting a vote in parliamentary elections. Most of the Electoral Commission members stayed idle until very afternoon, except the school number 5 polling site representatives expecting the country's main voter, the president Almazbek Atambayev.
Вы, наверное, Оля, помните, как были выборы 4 года назад в Бишкеке?
Only 4 years ago, the Kyrgyzstan citizens could hardly hope for honest elections. There were no elections as such, since the result had always been predetermined. Today we don't know who will be the election race winner. Days like this one do make the national history by signifying the whole new political milestone. Most countries are still far from reaching this development stage. Political scientists are convinced that clean elections might be possible in Kyrgyzstan, but never in Bishkek, as the political powers are unlikely to relinquish control over the country's financial center. Although no significant incidents were recorded on the election day, the most attentive independent observers kept reporting numerous violations. The morning started off with calls reporting that our observers were not allowed in after failing to provide the passport copies and applications. Although these requirements were not legislated, our representatives were nearly withdrawn from accreditation. A day after the elections, a few severe ballot infringements were revealed to the Bishkek community. The video uploaded to the internet exposed the Respublika Party's candidate for the capital parliamentary elections and a youth wing leader, Nargiza Azhabayeva, instructing young people to cast multiple votes for the party in different ballot sites. Keep speaking in a low voice. Here is the password you will need to say to the record clerk. She will ask you to put your signature under my name. Please stay calm. If she says that something's wrong with your passport, take it as a signal of unforeseen events and leave the place immediately. The top viewed video came under notice of the General Prosecutor's Office, who initiated criminal proceedings on the elements of offense under false voter personation and forgery of electoral documents. However, the investigators failed to locate Nargiza Azhabayeva. Meanwhile, she made a public appearance on Wednesday through one of the local TV channels allegedly sponsored by the main Republican Omurbek Babanov and claimed that she was not responsible for the ballot fraud. According to Azhabayeva, the whole situation was put up by the woman who uploaded the video. She insisted that I had to influence the campaign office employees to engage in voter personation. I foolishly agreed to do that and repeated her words to my campaign colleagues. This video recording shown on TV and internet resources is cut at the point where we decided to sit and talk over the actions again. That's when we actually changed our mind about participating in voting fraud. However, no one was able to see that. The scandal seems to have raised even more public doubts in electoral transparency. Quite a few people refer to the video recording of a repeat polling instructions as a manual for so-called carousel voting arrangement. The next day was marked by another scandal as the leader of Arnamız party, Felix Kulov, declared renouncing his position of the parliament coalition head. He claimed he had no moral right to chair the alliance of political factions whose representatives conduced to fraudulent elections. I personally endorsed the whole faction's initiative to pull out of the coalition following our leader's renunciation, as we don't want to bear responsibility for what happened during the local parliamentary elections. On top of that, I suggested recalling the Central Elections Committee members, including the chairman Tuygunali Abdraimov, as they were promoted by our faction. Their positions should be taken up by the rigidly honest candidates. I tend to perceive Felix Kulov's resignation as a sign of political and emotional immaturity. The Arnamız party has always had a large backing of Bishkek citizens while lacking trust of regional population. Thus, losing the major voters' support seems to have injured the Arnamız leader's pride, provoking him to resign commission. On the other hand, I believe Arnamız pursues certain goals. The initiative of Arnamız party's pullout that is likely to result in the coalition demise was followed by public backlash as people tend to deprecate a possible resignation of the newly formed coalition cabinet. The Kyrgyzstan citizens realized that surviving the winter with no valid executive branch will be difficult. The political scientists immediately came up with a parliament conspiracy theory suggesting that the Atatürk opposition party, along with Respublika involved in the ballot fraud scandal, are trying to gain commitment of Arnamız and create a governing majority coalition presided by Felix Kulov. I see the opposition party members hound the Arnamız representatives trying to lure them away during the parliament sessions and in the White House corridors. This is sure to result in major public disappointment in the Kyrgyzstan parliament as such. However, Arnamız party that failed to reach the 7% threshold suddenly came up with denial of rumors by announcing Felix Kulov's decision to suspend severing himself from the parliament coalition. The careful deliberation revealed that the resignment question appeared too premature for consideration. A serious decision like this must not be taken offhand. Thus, the motion has been taken off from the agenda. We didn't discuss a possibility of raising the question again in the future. Curiously, the news was announced by Felix Kulov immediately after the Central Election Committee's head speech. The Bishkek parliamentary elections will be considered invalid in case the voting results are declared void by the polling sites covering more than a third of the total number of voters. We have a video evidence of ballot box stuffing. The election committee had referred to the recorded evidence provided to the prosecution office both by the failed election candidates and the independent observers. Meanwhile, in case the election is qualified as valid, the citizens are likely to witness infighting of the new minted city government officials in race for the Bishkek mayor's position.
You were watching Vlast KZ on KPLUS channel. Trends, highlights and personalities of the past 7 days. Goodbye.